Welcome back to What's Your Take? Real talk on leadership and life. I'm your host, Dr. Nikki, the DBA pharmacist and founder of FitBiz Global Solutions. Today's episode takes us into the world of STEM leadership, where science, engineering, strategy, and people intersect in one of the most complex industries in the world. My guest, Alcindor Bonamy, is a general manager and project engineer at a major petroleum company in the Caribbean. With a background in chemical engineering and advanced study in quantum mechanics, he brings a rare combination of scientific precision and strategic vision to the energy sector. Together, we'll explore how STEM-trained leaders think differently, how they innovate under pressure, lead through uncertainty, and turn technical expertise into strategic advantage. So Al, you wear multiple hats, general manager and project engineer, which is a fascinating blend of technical and strategic leadership. Can you walk us through your career path and what led you to bridge those two worlds?
Hey, Dr. Nikki. So roughly it's just under 30 years of experience, but I'm really going to try and get that focus in this really short time. So I would say that my journey, it really didn't start in a boardroom or an engineering office. It actually began in a brewery. So I started working as a brewmaster with Heineken, which was my first real laboratory experience using pure and applied chemistry. Fermentation, it really forces you to respect chemistry, thermodynamics, heat transfer, reaction kinetics, because the product will expose every mistake. In brewing, quality is unforgiving. Precision is everything. And as I transitioned deeper into chemical and process engineering within the energy industry, the same principles scale. You control the variables, you understand the mechanisms, you eliminate the uncertainty, and you design repeatable outcomes. But the real inflection point began when I started integrating quantum mechanics into my thinking. Quantum theory teaches that systems don't sit in one state. They exist in a state of probabilities, or as we would say, superpositions, until measurement collapses them into a state of certainty. And leadership is exactly like that, because you walk into ambiguity, into competing possibilities, and you bring clarity. You then collapse uncertainty into aligned action. You turn entropy into strategy. So today, I lead the way an engineer thinks and engineer the way a leader acts, just trying to integrate STEM, operations, and the entire organizational strategy into one coherent approach. So bridging two worlds is a natural evolution of one truth, which is when you master the science behind systems, you earn the right to lead the people who run them.
That's fantastic. So you started your career deeply rooted in STEM. You say you started in a brewery, chemistry, engineering, and systems thinking. How did that foundation shape the kind of leader you've become today?
Well, my STEM foundation shaped the leader that I am today by teaching me that systems, whether technical or human, they respond to what I consider some guiding principles. They respond to truth, they respond to precision and discipline. So if I just reflect back, starting my career as a brewmaster with Heineken showed me that chemistry isn't theoretical. It reacts instantly to every choice you make. Fermentation taught me to respect variability, to diagnose problems quickly, and lead with humility and precision, because even a smallish fluctuation can change the entire outcome. When I transitioned into chemical engineering and later into major industrial projects within the energy sector, the mindset became a strategic strength. I learned that leadership, much like engineering, is about understanding the forces at play, managing uncertainty and designing outcomes with intention. If I think about, quantum mechanics, it deepened that perspective. It showed me that systems don't sit in a fixed state. They exist in probabilities. And that is exactly how leadership works. Teams and opportunities begin as a potential microstate, full of ambiguity. There's so many things that are uncertain, but it's the leader who brings clarity and collapses uncertainty into direction and converts what I say entropy into momentum.
So, starting, from chemistry background and being in the brewery, clearly very hands-on. So what inspired your shift from hands-on technical problem solving to leading people, projects, and strategy at a broader level?
So, great question. As I think of it, what inspired my shift into broader leadership was the moment I realized that the same principle governing molecules, Avogadro's number, also govern organizations. So in chemical engineering, every system is a negotiation between order, entropy, and it's the leader that becomes the stabilizing forces that engineers coherence, what I call it, out of complexity. I just have to think, it's actually quantum mechanics that pushed me even deeper. It showed me that nothing exists in a single state. Everything is a superposition of possibilities until an intentional act collapses into reality. And if you think about it, in my faith, because I'm, as you know, grounded in my faith, Jesus Christ demonstrated the ultimate chemical transformation when he turned water into wine. I call him the original chemical engineer. So we spend our careers trying to reach that miracle state, I call it. But leadership reminds us that sometimes we must default to the microorganisms' development. What I consider, if you think about it, patience. We must have alignment and some synergies, discipline, and growth. And that realization became my aha moment. That leadership is the measurement. It's that catalytic act that turns probabilistic chaos into a defined trajectory. So once I understood that, stepping beyond hands-on engineering wasn't a shift, it was an evolution. So I saw that first principles, certainty, quantification, and quantum reasoning could shape not only processes, but people, culture, and long-term strategy with scientific precision.
Okay, so basically you're saying that your background in chemical engineering and quantum mechanics influence your approach to leadership?
Absolutely, right? I've always been a chemistry at heart. From as far back as I could remember, at the age of 9, 10, I was drawn in that direction, chemistry, chemical engineering. And from there, it shaped who I was through high school, the roles that I took on, the jobs I took on, and my whole approach. So I know sometimes you would speak to other persons and leadership and you would ask them, what really inspired you? What was your focus? Some people may be lawyers because that was always in them, right? To follow part of the law profession. Or some persons always felt, they cared for persons, so they always wanted to become a doctor. Mm-hmm. And that shaped who they are, who they eventually became. So absolutely.
Okay.
For me.
Do you find that your scientific training helps you see people and problems differently? Maybe even make decisions differently?
Yeah, absolutely. My scientific training completely changed the way I see people and make decisions. In traditional thinking, we're taught to see situations. If we think of a coin flip, it's either heads or tail, right or wrong, success or failure. But quantum mechanics teaches something radically different. That before measurement, the coin is neither head or tails. It is both at the same time. It exists in superpositions, so holding multiple possibilities simultaneously. And that changed fundamentally how I lead. So I don't look at people as in a fixed position, a fixed state. I see them as a superpositions of potential, or we call it, potentiality. So it's not just the role they occupy today. They carry multiple possibilities, multiple trajectories, depending upon the environment, depending upon the development, depending upon the energy that we pour into them. So my decisions really reflect that. So instead of reacting to the surface outcome, I try to understand the underlying space, the underlying probability, the conditions that shape the behavior, the performance, and the opportunity. I always tell people, if you're trying to understand a situation or a person, don't look at the person themselves. Try to look at the environment. Try to understand the environment, because inevitably we can't change our environment, but our environment shapes who we become. So chemical and process engineering really taught me how to analyze systems beneath the surface, pathways that aren't really obvious. And quantum mechanics added that insight, and leadership just becomes the act of measurement. So yes, scientific training shapes how I lead. It helps me see complexities instead of labels, potential instead of limitations, and decisions not as binary choices, but as opportunities. And with those opportunities that could actually influence the entire landscape. And really, that perspective allows me to lead with precision. However, I must say, you must have empathy. You must be able to put yourself within that person's shoes, so to speak, and have a deeper understanding of what people and systems can truly become.
Okay. So that's like your bridge from science to strategy. But looking at innovation and decision making in energy, innovation in the energy sector often looks different from what we see in tech. It's grounded in precision, like you say, process, and sustainability. So what does innovation mean to you in a STEM-driven environment, and how do you encourage it within your teams?
In a STEM-driven environment, innovation isn't just about creating something new. It's about challenging the assumptions that limit what we believe is possible. So in chemical engineering and process engineering, I learned that every system has hidden efficiencies, untapped pathways. Innovation begins the moment you stop accepting constraints as fixed and start treating them as a variable you can engineer. So even as we have discussions and we go through technical difficulties, it's like, okay, trying to go a little bit deep and try to understand how can I modify or change the outcome. And again, for me, quantum mechanics reinforces that mindset. At the quantum level, I have to bring how this all comes together for me. Particles don't just follow linear, predictable behavior. They explore multiple states. So innovation works the same way. If we think about it, it requires a superposition mindset. So think about this as in teams, where we allow teams to explore parallel ideas, right? All at once. You're not trying to control the environment. They test bold hypotheses, ways of thinking, imagine solutions before the measurement of reality collapses these possibilities into final outcome. So what does that mean? It means that we have to allow creativity to morph and continue to grow. And it only happens when you allow ideas that are still fluid with rich or significant expansion of different probabilities. So how do I encourage innovation? In the workplace, in the environment, I create environments where people can think, where it's safe to test your theories, your hypotheses within, it's okay to fail once we check, what that failure looks like. I encourage teams to map problems, just like engineers, identify what are the limiting steps, what is holding you back, look for opportunities, challenge the status quo, elevate the activation energy of your thinking, right? And just reminding them that the future is not a single path, but a landscape of whatever you can imagine it to be. No idea is a bad one. Let's bring all those to the table. So to me, innovation is believing in unseen possibilities and leading the team into a future no one ever imagined.
Okay, great. So as both a project engineer and GM, how do you balance that technical accuracy with strategic, big picture decision making?
I balance that by treating leadership like a multi-scale system, okay? So chemical engineering train me to move fluidly between microscopic, so thinking very small, quantum, and then macroscopic, just growing it and making it much bigger. And understanding, the fine details of what's happening, but never losing sight of the overall process. And the same applies to leadership. So when we think about technical accuracy, that's about precision, right? That's about the data, the constraints, what's stopping you, what's limiting you, the risks buried in the details. And strategy is about context, the energy of the system, the direction of the organization, and the long-term trajectory of vision that we have. And you can't lead effectively without both. For me, quantum mechanics strengthens that balance. At the quantum level, you learn that reality behaves differently depending, on how and where you observe it. Leadership works the same way. Sometimes you need the zoomed in measurement to understand the truth inside a project. And sometimes you need to take the wide angle view to understand the truth inside the organization. No different than, you having a camera. Everyone has a camera. If you have Canon or the Nikon cameras, you have a wide zoom so that you can see the entire scope around you. And then sometimes you need to zoom in to get a clear, precise picture. And so here, the key is knowing when to collapse the uncertainty and when to step back so that the macro picture can emerge. So the balance really comes from switching those lenses deliberately. So when the stakes are technical, I go deep. That's accuracy, variables, failure modes. And when the stakes are strategic, I go high. So I look at vision, alignment, momentum. And I have to take this time to just talk about in both roles, I live through the truth of entropy. So Shannon and von Neumann entropy. So what does that mean? So at the technical scale, I reduce Shannon entropy by creating clarity where information is noisy or incomplete. if I think about that, preventing errors before they happen, and strategically, on a strategic scale, I reduce volume and entropy by bringing coherence to a system with many possible states, aligning people and decisions in a unified direction. So that's how I bridge both worlds, turning uncertainty into audit progress.
Okay, those are some salient points, and for those who understand, very valid. Okay, as we segue into systems thinking and risk, one thing I notice about STEM leaders is their comfort with complexity. In your role is very complex, so their comfort with complexity, analyzing variables, testing hypotheses, and adapting in real time. So how does that translate into how you manage uncertainty, risk, large-scale projects in the petroleum and energy space?
So as a STEM leader, I don't fear complexity. I structure, because by you doing STEM, you kind of get thrown into it, you get the engineering thrown at you, the mathematics, everything comes at you, and you need to get through, right? So chemical and process engineering really trained me to see systems as a balance of variables, right? Energy flows. That's how I manage uncertainty and risk in petroleum and the energy space. I look at fuel supply, asset integrity, the rate at which pipelines, tanks, corrodes, etc., probably based upon the environment. For those persons who live close to the water, you know that the salt here with some wind could accelerate the rate of corrosion. If you're further inland, you don't have those issues, right? And it, again, back to the environment. You have to identify what are those things that are causing the rate of corrosion or breakdown. And you have to build controls that keep those systems stable under pressure. That's what leadership is. You have to build a team, right? You have to ensure that persons have the right skill set, and if they don't have the right skill set, you have to try and see how best you can garner and help them to deliver those skill set. And you kind of have to go a little bit deeper and try to understand them, on multiple levels, because sometimes people just are budding potential, and you just need to go a little bit deeper to understand them, and then so much can blossom. So as STEM leaders, we're trained to turn noise into information, probabilities into decision, and uncertainty into momentum.
Okay, that's powerful. Powerful statements. Do your experiences with quantum systems or engineering models influence how you think through those high-stakes project dynamics?
Quantum systems and engineering models. Okay, let's think about this. Quantum systems.
That's complex, isn't it? Complex question for complex industry.
However, I will do my best to make it uncomplicated. I can't remember who said it once, but they said that anyone can make something complex, but it takes a genius to make a complex situation simple, right? So I think everybody should strive, irrespective of how complex the situation may be, to try to make it as simple as possible.
Okay, we lost you again. You're back. One thing we definitely doing is
I was in my superposition states. I was in quantum entanglement, right? Superposition. I guess based upon our topic, right? So absolutely. Yep. So my experience with quantum systems and engineering models, it really shapes the way I approach high stake projects every day. So very simply, quantum mechanics teaches you that systems are never as simple as they appear. They could exist in multiple potential states, influenced by variables you can't always see. So that insight is invaluable in project leadership, especially in the energy sector where conditions shift quickly and the cost of error is extremely high. I always say that one of the mantras that we have is flawless execution always, because in my role, in what I do, when I make mistakes, people die. So you can't make mistakes. Engineering models really reinforce that complexity. They force you to understand interactions, all the constraints, and multiple scenarios, right? Without destabilizing the entire system. And you learn that stability isn't accidental, it's engineered. So when I'm managing a high-stake project, real quick, I think the way quantum systems behave. Let me break that down. So 1, identify the superpositions. That's the multiple possible outcomes. 2, you map the probability landscape. What does that all look like? And 3, you apply the right interventions to collapse uncertainty, because that's what we're trying to do, into the safest, most strategic state. And when things get volatile, my engineering background really keeps me grounded. And so what does that mean? That means for me as a chemical engineer, mass balances, energy balances, failure modes, HAZOP, which is hazard operability, hazard, risk assessments, people, environment, assets, reputation. And these frameworks help me to see structure where others see chaos. So yes, quantum systems and engineering models influence everything, but they help me to anticipate instability before it occurs. Design pathways that withstand disruption and really make decisions that convert complexity into control and predictable performance.
I think it's good how you broke down the complexity and uncomplexed it for those who may need additional understanding. So that's going to bring me to one of the good sections, one of my favorites, the Quickfire reflections. So usually with this, just one quick reflection. And the first one I'm going to ask is, what's one STEM principle that unexpectedly applies to leadership?
Okay, I'm going to go back because chemical, pure and applied chemistry. And for persons listening, one STEM principle that unexpectedly applies to leadership is Le Chatelain's principle. The idea that when a system is stressed, it shifts to restore equilibrium. And I could go into the full definition, but I think this is fine. So teams work the same way. So pressure doesn't break them. It reveals where balance must be rebuilt. And here's the quantum twist. A system doesn't collapse into its final state until it's observed with intention. Leadership is that observation. It's the catalyst that shapes how the organization stabilizes. So that's the unexpected truth. The same laws that bring order to chemical and quantum states also brings order to people if the leader knows how to use them.
Okay, that was insightful. It brings me into the next quickfire question. What is a leadership skill you wish every engineer or technical expert would develop sooner rather than later?
Yeah, I think for me, that would be the ability to see beyond the equation, to recognize that not every variable in a system is mathematical. Early in STEM, anyone who did STEM, we're trained to perfect models. As if you're a pharmacist, you did engineering, it doesn't matter, to eliminate error and chase the right answer. Because I remember, that's what drove us into STEM, because, it's either right or wrong. It ain't no trying to infer what the answer is. But in leadership, the hardest variables to solve are human, right? Depends upon how somebody woke up this morning, what they had for breakfast, the interaction they had with their family before they came in. And so that's where communication stands in. That's key, how you communicate. Alignment, distance, emotion, clarity. So I wish engineers learned sooner that the real breakthrough comes when you treat people with the same curiosity you bring to a model. When you realize that uncertainty isn't a flaw, it's information. That the teams don't behave like rigid structures. I would honestly say that they behave like quantum systems. They shift based on energy, what energy that you're putting out. We call it sometimes good energy or bad energy. So you could call it, is it positive energy or negative energy? Observations on the environment. The skill is this: develop the emotional intelligence to complement the technical intelligence. So when engineers master both, they stop just optimizing processes. They start transforming organizations.
I like that. Yeah, that's a good one. And then finally, a mindset you rely on when leading under pressure. Final question.
So the mindset I rely on under pressure is simple. Treat the moment like a dynamic system. Not a crisis. So in engineering, pressure doesn't scare you. It clarifies which variables matters. Back to my roots. So for me, quantum mechanics reinforces that perspective. So when everything feels uncertain, it's because the system hasn't been observed with intention yet. So under pressure, I slow the moment down. I focus on the signal, not the noise. I reduce the problem to first principles, collapse the uncertainty into a single actionable state, and move decisively. And spiritually, I remember that pressure isn't meant to break me. It's meant to reveal the strength that's already there. So for me, the mindset is clarity over chaos, purpose over panic, and decisions grounded in truth, not fear. Because in faith, fear is not of God. And with my reliance on Jesus Christ, the original chemical engineer, that's how I lead when the stakes are highest.
Wow, that's great. I like how you had reiterated earlier, for those who may not understand the importance and significance of what people do in STEM careers, when you said that when you make mistakes, people die. Like, I think people need to understand the gravity of what that means. You know what I mean? So that's good. I'm happy you pointed it out. That was significant. A lot of people don't understand that these other professions that maybe people don't know about is just as important as the ones that are more highly publicized. So I like that. What else I liked about it is that with this story, it shows how leadership in general, STEM leadership, isn't limited by discipline, but is strengthened by it. Is there anything else you want to add before I take it away?
Yeah. I would say, there are certain things I do, certain habits I keep. I always go back to the first principle, right? I think the important thing that we need to look at is that never think about a system as being chaotic as it looks until you observe it with clarity. And again, you were talking about complexity, and I agree, it often feels overwhelming to persons. And for those listening, you need to take a moment to pause, you take a breath, focus your observation, the noise settles, the probability lines up, and the next move becomes visible. And if I'm honest, faith, it keeps me steady too. The reminder that I'm not carrying everything alone, because it allows me to make decisions from a place of clarity instead of fear. So return to first principles, observe with intention, and move with purpose. Once you do that, everything else falls into place.
Fantastic. And for those who may not know what STEM means, STEM simply means science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It's a field that we want to promote more of in this world. We're lacking in that in terms of qualified individuals. So what I want to point out and highlight here is that STEM leaders bring analytical thinking, precision, and curiosity that change how teams solve problems and drive innovation. Whether you're leading in healthcare, energy, or education, this conversation is a reminder that the future of leadership is multidisciplinary. And for our guest, Alcindor Bonamy, you can connect with him on LinkedIn under his name. And if this episode sparked something new for you, share your takeaway with me at fitbiz.solutions using the hashtag What's Your Take podcast, because these are the conversations shaping the leaders of tomorrow. Thank you for tuning in to What's Your Take? Real talk on leadership and life. If this episode spoke to you, I'd love for you to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. Share it with someone who's ready to lead with both logic and heart. And join the community at fitbizsolutions.com. You can also connect with us on social on Instagram, fitbiz.solutions, Facebook, Fitbiz Solutions, and YouTube, Fitbiz Solutions Media. New episodes drop every Thursday, and next time we'll continue exploring leadership. This brings us to one of our last episodes before our wrap-up, and hopefully you'll tune in next week to hear our final episode of the season. Until then, keep leading with clarity, curiosity, and conviction, and always keep asking, what's your take?